Harry, Emily called from the bed. Is everything okay? I looked down at the crying woman. Her sobs were silent now, she just stared up at me, silently, tears in her eyes. Harry, Emily said, more insistently this time. I slowly shut the door. My hands were shaking, my legs were weak. When I turned around, Emily was sitting on the edge of the bed, her brown eyes locked intently at me. The closet was empty, I said. I walked back over to the bed, nearly fainting in the process, and sat down next to her. I must have just imagined it. Ah, Harry, she said, wrapping an arm around me. I flinched at her touch. This whole thing has been stressing you out, huh? I nodded. 3 knocks on the door broke through the quiet. Will you go let them in? I would, but I'm not dressed, she said with a light giggle, hands trailing over her silky chemise. I didn't move from the bed. Harry. No. There was no way I was leaving her alone in the bedroom while I went downstairs. I'd go down, but I don't feel so good. I lied. I think. I just need to lie down. Will you handle it? She paused, staring into my eyes. Then she finally nodded. She got off the bed, pulled on a bathrobe, and headed towards the door. As soon as she disappeared from sight, I ran to the closet. She was still there. The woman who looked just like my wife, sitting on the floor, silently crying. The woman who was my wife. I don't know how I knew she was the right one, I just did. It was something intangible, a gut feeling, that I can't put into words. I crouched down and laid my hand on her shoulders. Emily. Emily, can you hear me? Her eyes stared blankly into mine. Tears streamed down her face. What happened to you? She didn't reply. Voices murmured downstairs. Heavy footsteps resonated through the house. We were running out of time. I grabbed her hand. You have to come with me. Now. She slowly, shakily, stood up. I pulled her out of the bedroom, and we softly entered the hall. Making our way to our kids' room. Downstairs, the lights were on. Emily was turned away from us, talking to the 2 policemen in dark outfits. We can't let her see us. Silence. Don't make a sound. Don't even. Emily suddenly let go of my hand. She ran. Her footsteps thundered across the hall as she sprinted into our kids' room. Emily, no. I whispered. As I ran after her, I glanced down the staircase. Emily was staring at us. So were the police officers. Their hands were on their guns. That's when I realized that Emily hadn't been calling 911 at all. She'd been calling for backup. I dove into our kids' bedroom. My wife was already crouched over Abby and Mark, sobbing uncontrollably. And for the first time since I found her, she was speaking. Muttering the same 3 words, over and over. I love you. I helped them out of bed. Abby. Mark. We need to go. Now. They sleepily followed me towards the door, my wife trailing behind them. I opened the door. Emily stood in front of us. The 2 policemen stood behind her, guns raised. Run. I said to Emily. It was a risk. A huge one. They could shoot all of us in an instant. But, for some reason, they didn't. We ran down the stairs, and they chased after us. But no shots were fired. We were alive. As we ran out the door, I grabbed our car keys from the hook. Then we were pulling out of the driveway. The 3 of them stood in the doorway, watching us. Guns still raised, yet never pulling the trigger. Abby, Mark, are you okay? I asked as we pulled onto the highway. Daddy, what's happening? Abby asked. Are we in trouble? Mark asked. We're okay now, I said. We reported everything to the police, but by the time they arrived at the house, it was empty. No trace of the woman I'd called my wife for months. No trace of the 2 police officers, either. We quickly sold the house and moved several states away. Emily recovered very slowly, but she didn't seem to sustain any permanent damage. In time, she eventually told me what happened. It was a few months ago, about a month after we got pregnant, she said, her hands shaking as she picked up her cup of tea. I got up to use the bathroom, and I heard someone outside. Someone crying for help. I went to the back door, opened it, and called out to see if they needed help. Then. I don't remember. I'm so sorry, I said, squeezing her hand. I kept waking up in the woods. Every time I did, I tried to make my way back to you. But all I could do was cry and scream. It was like my mind was too foggy to form words. I must have been drugged, or something. She squeezed my hand back. All I could think about was you. Getting back to you, and Abby, and Mark. When I found the door unlocked one night, I walked up to our bedroom. And then, I don't remember, but I must have gotten scared, because I found myself in the closet, hiding away from your and that woman's voice. Unable to stop crying. I'm just glad you're back, I said, wrapping her in my arms and holding her tight. Now, it's been almost a year since Emily and I got away. While life has been wonderful, and baby Leah is the sweetest thing, a gnawing fear has settled in my stomach. I've tried to ignore it and pass it off as stress. Anxiety. Fear. One of those haunting thoughts born out of terror, rather than logic. But the more time that passes, the harder it is to ignore. Our two other kids, Abby and Mark. They haven't grown an inch since we moved.